What's up, SVSers? We are back with another Audiophile Happy Hour. Of course, I am here with my colleagues, Mr. Ed Mullen. Ed, how are you this evening?
Doing great, Nick. Thank you for having me.
Joining from vacation, too. So thank you, Ed, for taking some time off. I know you've been...
This is how Ed spends his vacations.
Yeah. Missed this, even on
I'm really in the Caribbean, and this is just a mock-up of my office. I'm on the beach right now.
Green screen. And you were showing off some top shelf brown liquor, if I'm not mistaken. You're imbibing tonight, huh?
Yeah. Speaking of the Caribbean, this is my good friend Smith Freeman sent this.
That's one of Smith's favorites. He told me to get that too.
This is 14-year Balvenie, finished in a Caribbean cask. It is absolutely fantastic. You can see I've drank the shoulders off it. Not tonight, but it's a fantastic Scotch. I highly recommend it.
Great recommendation to start the show off. And of course, we have the Larry Magoo. Larry, how are you doing this evening?
I am fantastic, and I hope that you gentlemen are as well. And I see a lot of awesome comments already flying in. So hello, community. I hope that things are well.
And of course, we have our fearless leader, Gary Yakubian. Gary, how are you this evening?
Hey, you know what? I am so happy to be with everybody. It feels like yet another inflection point in our time. I don't really exactly understand the environment. I feel like it's ever shifting, but what I do know is one thing stays the same, which is our joy with our connection with our community, the SVS community. So great to be with everyone tonight.
Absolutely. And Gary and I were actually going back and forth scheduling all of our future happy hours right up until December. So you're not going to...
We're committed to these virtual happy hours no matter what, right?
Absolutely. Right up until the end of the year. So you'll be we'll be joining you, not necessarily every 2 weeks, but we'll be getting a rhythm going. So we're excited. And for any of the first time people...
You know, can we say one thing about Ed? I told Ed, it's your vacation. We'll figure out a way not to do it. And with you in it, which is a big miss when we're doing our lightning round, but Ed's like, I really enjoy it. So Ed's doing because he loves being with the SVS community.
Yeah, I miss everybody, and the show's a lot of fun. So it's not that much out of my day, and I'm happy to sit down and join everyone.
Thanks,
and
Ed.
Ed has been with SBS longer than I've had facial hair, so it's it's impressive, and he still has this passion and joy. So
I'm sure he thinks of it that way too.
We're just super happy to have it.
Yeah, we can see a lot of my facial hair is getting gray, so it's been a while.
Yeah, a little bit. So for anyone who's a first timer, what we do here is we have 4 giveaways throughout the course of the evening. We'll announce names live on the air, and our man Vince, who's working behind the scenes, will reach out to you, get your shipping information, and make sure you get taken care of in short order. And what about those 4 fabulous giveaways, Larry? Will you like to do the honors? And
how do they win a prize? I forget.
Yeah, how do you win a prize?
Good point. Leave a comment, ask a question, that's it. One comment, one question, that's it. You're eligible. We'll be scanning them. We have a randomizer. We'll choose names. I will announce them. And like I said, we'll get your shipping information and take care of you. So with that said, what are the fabulous prizes, Larry?
So we've got 4. We've got an SB-1000 Pro Subwoofer we're going to be giving away, a pair of prime elevation speakers that can be used for your fronts, rears, heights, surrounds, however you choose to use them, a prime wireless SoundBase amplifier, which I absolutely love, and our newest addition to the family, the 3000 micro subwoofer. So we've got some great prizes for you all tonight.
I saw a lot of excitement about that 3000 micro giveaway on our little teaser last night. So that'll be an exciting one to close out the evening.
Oh, it got a bunch of reviews and awards, didn't it? Since, in fact, I don't think we were able to announce it until now, right?
No, that was not on the agenda for tonight, but I'm glad you brought that up, Gary. Why don't you frame up quickly before we get into our recommendations and what we've been tuning into, the big news around the 1000 Pros and the 3000 Micros.
Well, so just to say, I mean, they've been getting rave reviews all around the world. 3000 Micro, we weren't allowed to talk about this, I don't think, the last show. 3000 Micro got a rave review in the August Stereophile, which I'm really thrilled about, that it's been embraced by the audiophile community, not just because it's a great micro subwoofer, but because it is such an accurate and compelling subwoofer in terms of its sound and definition of the notes in a 2-channel scenario. So I was thrilled. You read the review, and it's really, really in depth. He spent a lot of time with it, matched it up with different speakers, and just really, we were thrilled about it. Also, Sound and Vision. I think we did talk about this last time. Reviewed both the 1000 Pro SB sealed cabinet model and 1000 Pro PB ported cabinet model, and gave them both 5 stars across the board, every aspect of their performance and value, which I personally don't ever remember seeing with that magazine. Usually they ding you for some small thing or other.
Yep.
And then what we're allowed to, so I'm thrilled. I mean, these products are really being embraced. Relative to our lineup, they're inclusively priced. A normal person can afford them, and they're getting hailed as reference products. And the latest news, which we were not allowed to talk about until a week ago, the SB-1000 Pro and the 3000 micro. No, I'm losing my voice. Excuse me. Subwoofers won the ISO award, which is 60 audiophile magazines around the world voted. And this is Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first time a single brand won for 2 different subwoofers.
That's correct. And just so you know, the ISA stands for Expert Imaging and Sound Association. And so this is the first year that a brand has won for 2 subwoofers, and the first time that a brand has won 2 of the ISA awards in consecutive years. Remember, last year, our Prime Pinnacle and our SB-1000 Pro took the crown. So it was quite an honor, and both Stereophile and Sound and Vision are members of that, as well as Hi-Fi News in the UK, Soundstage in Canada. I mean, there's books in Germany and all over the world, Australia, who are voting on this. So it's really, it's quite an honor to have.
It's the closest thing to an Oscar we have in the audio space. I mean, right. When you have 60 magazines voting, you have to feel pretty great about that.
Absolutely. So super proud of that. And as we normally do, we're going to get into a little bit about what we've been listening to. But there was a little bit of a sad news this year. So I'm actually going to start off. I do want to send condolences to a good friend of mine, his family. His name is Mark Ailing. He worked for Paradigm and Anthem and Martin Logan for quite a while. He more recently worked for Soundstage. He just passed away, and he was a mentor of mine early on when I was doing PR and I was representing them. So it was just super sad to see Mark pass, and I want to send my condolences. There's a great write-up about him and the contributions he made to the AV community, and some people saying some fond things about him in Dealer Scope. So check that out. He's a great dude. So condolences to Mark.
I mean, we're in this space all together, and there's a camaraderie to it. I knew Mark as well, not as well as you did, but I knew him as well. And I know the guys, yes, we're competitors, but we know the guys from Paradigm and Martin Logan very well, and a lot of the other ones. And there's a camaraderie to it. So I'm sorry to lose one of our family. And then the other one that I kind of wanted to talk about was the passing of Charlie Watts.
Wow.
And Charlie Watts was the Rolling Stones drummer. He was not the original member, but one of the very first members of the band after Keith Richards and Mick Jagger. And I've been reading these reviews, and they're kind of making me mad, these obituaries where they're sort of saying, oh, he was really well dressed. Oh, he was content to live in the background, and he was understated and quiet. This guy was one of the most thrilling, accomplished drummers in history, any kind of music. He was absolutely awesome, and he was not just content to stay in the background. If you listen to a lot of Rolling Stones songs, you can hear him just basically taking over the song. I'm gonna mention the album Let It Bleed, the song Let It Bleed, the song Live With Me, the Give Me Shelter, from Beggar's Banquet, Street Fighting Man, and also from Exile on Main Street, Rocks Off. Check out any of those tracks, and you tell me, is this guy content to sit in the background? He was an absolutely thrilling drummer. I'm not even the biggest Rolling Stones fan, but that's a huge, huge loss. So condolences to his family. I maybe one or two of them is listening, or people that are colleagues of him. He made a huge, huge imprint on obviously rock music, but music in general.
Very well said, Gary. And it's important to mention these things. I think we're all affected on them personally on some level. So But I think now we can move into some of our recommendations, that things that we've been tuning into here in the past to try to lighten things up a bit. And Ed, I'm going to go to you first. You've had some time off here, so I imagine you've been doing a lot of work outside, but also binging some things. What have you been tuning into most recently?
You know, we watched The Vault on Netflix, and man, I thought it was just fabulous. It was like theatrical grade. It was a thrilling movie. It was tension filled. It was smart. The pacing was great. I just can't say enough good things about it. Really enjoyed that movie.
Wow, I saw The Vault too, and my wife fell asleep during it. I actually thought, like you, I thought it was very interesting, but I think the sort of the Britishness of it sort of got to her, because like it's very sort of like dialogue driven, and then there's like spots of action. But I agree with you. If you had your system cranked up, it was hard to fall asleep. But
speaking of system, finally, the reference theater is back together with the Sony 695 4K running, Denon 6700 running. Many of you know that we suffered a lightning strike a year ago, and I had to wait forever to get the equipment in because of the chip shortage, and then it sat around in the home theater forever, and this was one of the projects that we had scheduled for the vacation this week, was to knock this out, and I'm happy to say everything's up, running, calibrated, video calibration, audio calibration. And we really enjoyed watching The Vault on the reference system downstairs. I've missed it. Very good. There should be no one, of all people, you should be the last person to be out of order with your system. So congratulations. Backing up and running. Larry, I know you got a legit T-shirt today that's sort of commemorating something. Yeah. Talk about that, and then what you've been tuning into.
Yeah, so big Terminator 2 fan, and I think we're all waiting for the robots to take over. And Judgment Day, the anniversary of that, is this week, so it's the 29th. So I'm repping my Skynet T-shirt tonight.
Awesome, great movie, great series. Loved it. It's one of my personal favorites.
Yeah, and I think that's a movie that I have purchased, and I'm going to bet a lot of you have, between DVD and Blu-ray, and even HD DVD, probably 10 or 13 or 14 times, because there's always something new on a disc. But yeah, I been looking forward to that, and then well, not looking forward to it, but just remember that the date was this week. And then I finally got around to watching Suicide Squad, and enjoyed it. But I really like James Gunn and all the extremes that he takes in all his movies. So we watched that one this past week too.
Very cool. And Gary, what about you? What you been tuning into?
I saw Suicide Squad as well, and I thought it was great. He's very clever, in the way he creates things. So that's one. And then, I really like HBO Max because they have thought-provoking, highbrow, intellectual content, and I definitely got sucked into F-Boy Island. I don't know if anybody has. It's not. Trust me, it's not intellectual at all, but it is very entertaining. With Nikki Glazer and sort of a very warped version of The Bachelor in Paradise or something. I definitely think it's funny. It's on the edge, so don't watch it with your family, but it's entertaining.
Can you say the title of that again, Gary?
I'm saying exactly what they say. They never actually say the word. So
I was gonna have to bleep you out.
What was it called?
Glad to know. Well, I binged The White Lotus, which I did enjoy quite a bit, and that was a good one to watch with my significant other. So we thoroughly enjoyed that. There's some shocking moments, to say the least, but it was a lot of fun. I also started Ted Lasso, which has been getting all sorts of praise and accolades from people on Twitter and elsewhere. Very snappy dialogue, keeps your attention. Lots of witty quips going on there. So I would recommend that as well. And then you might remember on the last episode, I was opining about the best music to mow my lawn to. I'm not going to do a playlist, Gary, because I know this may not be the best time for it, but I figured out what I like to mow my lawn to, and that's 70s country music. Hank Williams, Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings. Something about that song just works well when I'm mowing my lawn, especially Willie Nelson. So that's what I've settled on, at least for this part of the summer, and I might transition from there. But if
that's not the way you described it to me, though. You said hardcore country.
Yeah, I mean, but that's hardcore country for me because I don't listen to country very much.
I want some like metal class style banjo playing and drums and stuff when I think hardcore country.
He might cut a toe off if he does that. I think he needs something to keep him laid back a little bit. Hey, the comments are very interesting, very divided on F-Boy Island. I'm going to have to go back and read them here.
Said it again, yes.
All right, well, we are at quarter past, so I think we're due for a giveaway before we actually get into our first topic of the evening. And it looks like we're giving away our SB-1000 Pro ISA award-winning SB-1000 Pro subwoofer. And the winner of that is Adam Dirks. Adam Dirks, congratulations. Look out for a note from Vince. We'll get you out that subwoofer. Congratulations, Adam. So last broadcast, we had a question about subwoofer connections, and I'm actually going to pop up a little screen here. This is the rear panel of our PV16 Ultra subwoofer. If you give me just a quick second. And basically, there's a number of different ways to connect your subwoofer, and we're going to talk about the differences between them. And the first one that I'm circling here is called XLR. And Gary, maybe I'll start with you here, and we can transition to Ed. But when?
Well, why don't we? I just to sort of, I think 99% of subwoofers are connected using the RCA cable. So maybe we start with that, and then talk about what the differences are.
Yeah, I was going the opposite direction, but I
right. No, but I either way makes sense. But that
would be,
the RCA cable is a reliable connection. Works for, as probably, would you agree, Ed, 99% of people who use it. Many even higher performance receivers do not have XLR outputs. So the opportunity to connect via XLR is limited to higher end components. What is the benefit of XLR? In my opinion, and I'm more than willing to have Ed and Larry weigh in, the best thing about XLR is because it's the ground is separate completely, and the signal transfer, it stays that way from beginning to end. The noise floor is typically the lowest it could be, even in a long run. It's not subject to interference and noise, even in a really long cable run. So it's a great choice in a I guess a more audiophile scenario where the noise floor is already really low, or when there's a long cable run. And Ed, I'd like to, maybe you could also weigh in on that.
XLR balanced connections really got their sort of claim to fame on the Pro Sound circuit because it's a very robust connection, and as Gary said, it has excellent noise rejection characteristics. It's virtually immune to RFI, line and noise in the line, things like that. So it's an excellent choice if you have it. From a fidelity standpoint, it's really virtually the same signal as the RCA connection. So one doesn't necessarily sound better than the other, and for a short run like you're typically experiencing in a home theater environment or a home music environment, the RCA unbalanced connection is virtually just as good.
We have someone. Okay, you grabbed the question I just saw. Good for you. What does a long cable run actually mean? I would say 3 meters or longer. So most subwoofers are connected up to 3 meters, and I don't think that it's going to be subject to a lot of interference using an RCA cable at all.
It'll be fine. We've literally seen owners run an RCA cable 50, 70 feet, and then you really start picking up some RFI or maybe some AC noise if you're crossing AC lines behind the wall or something like that. So that's really when you want to look hard at going to a balanced connection, because there just is a practical limit on how much of a run you can make with RCA before you start increasing the potential for noise pickup in the line.
I mean, before we had a really high performance wireless connection, which we now do with our SoundPath to wireless audio adapters, I often connected a subwoofer that's on one floor to an output that's on another floor using XLR, because a 50-foot run is no problem for XLR. It is more expensive, just to say. Kev, stay tuned. Stay tuned, Kev. I'm not supposed
Someone
to talk
else.
about
Somebody else just asked if XLR's 3 dB louder than RCA. It's 6 dB because it's double the voltage. But a lot of equipment will pad down the XLR output to make it the same voltage as RCA.
I mean, I put that one on a T for you there, Gary, but I'm glad you took a swing. So Ed, maybe address this question while I load up a picture of the rear panel of our SB-1000 Pro here, because that actually has a different kind of connection that we can talk about for a second. Low-level hum from the phono preamp.
Oh, this one, yeah. And also FM radio signal that comes through. I would say this is likely an unshielded connection that you're using, and the lack of shielding is picking up probably it sounds like you got a little ground loop in there. And also if you're picking up FM radio, for sure, you need to use shielded cables because that cable is acting like basically an FM antenna. We've actually had that before, had customers call us up and say, I think there's a ghost in my subwoofer. I can hear voices coming through.
He's talking about I don't think he's talking about subwoofer. He's talking about his connection with his turntable.
Yeah, it sounds like he's got
using a phono preamp. And a turntable has a ground wire, and he's I'm sure following the rules and grounding the turntable to his receiver or whatever is using the phono preamp. The problem may be that the FM radio that's in the receiver is interfering with the ground connector that he did, and so just grounding his turntable ground wire to something else, not the receiver, may solve that problem.
Yeah, well, it could be that. I was thinking he was getting FM through an unshielded cable that he's using from the phono preamp.
I know one thing. That's the most maddening thing to track down, but it's definitely worth it. You don't want to hear hum.
Yeah,
ground loops one thing at a time, or start over.
All right, so back to our original conversation about subwoofer connections. This is the rear panel of our SB-1000 Pro subwoofer, and you'll see that we have speaker level inputs. What would be the practical use case for these? And I'll kick that one to you, Larry, since you haven't had an opportunity to chime in yet.
Well, I was reading a comment over here and totally missed the question, but you know, if you're using legacy equipment, you might find yourself using the speaker level input.
Because you don't have a choice.
Yeah, because you don't have an RCA out, whether it's pre-outs or subwoofer dedicated outputs. So you might find yourself where you have to go into the speaker level input so that you can take the signal into the subwoofer itself. And then you'd have to modify crossovers and stuff in the subwoofer because it would be receiving a full level signal. I think almost all of us in the company will use an RCA input if we can, or XLR if available. But if you do have older equipment that doesn't have that, that's where the line level input comes in.
And that's really the only reason we have it. It's there as a convenience to support vintage legacy equipment that doesn't have line level outputs, and it works very well for that purpose and puts a smile on a lot of people's faces that otherwise wouldn't be able to run a subwoofer in their vintage system.
But would you agree, gentlemen, that we would prefer a direct line level connection via RCA or XLR over speaker level, which introduces some distortion that you would prefer not to have if you can avoid it? Sometimes you can't avoid it.
Right. The preference is line level. It's a cleaner signal, but if you need to run speaker level because you have no choice, then by all means use it.
Well said. I think there was some good information shared there, and we're going to rattle through we're doing just an extended lightning round here. So we're going to rattle through a couple quick product questions just about recommendations and sort of insights about the differences between them. But Larry, this one's for you. What's a good subwoofer to pair with the Prime bookshelf speakers?
Really, any of them in the lineup. With my Prime bookshelves, I use a 1000 Pro, but the 2000 Pro would be great. The Micro would be great. You really can't go wrong with any of those. Heck, do a 16 if you got the room and the space for it. But
is this for like a music system?
Yeah,
we're just throwing a vague question. I think ultimately it's an it depends kind of answer on your listening preferences, your room size. But I I would go with the 2000 Pro. I mean, I think that's a good match for the prime bookshelf speakers in any sort of average size room. And then if you have an extremely large room, go bigger. It's a little compact office, go smaller. And, that would be my recommendation. So moving right along, what is the difference between the 2000
I mean,
Pro?
one thing that person might want to hear is if it's a music system, it's a 2-channel system. Listen, all our subwoofers are musical. They really are. But I think that the SB-1000 Pro and the SB-2000 Pro are sealed configuration models, are so good now. Their output is outstanding. Their low frequency extension is awesome, that you don't really need to spend the additional money for a ported cabinet version of the subwoofer. And I actually think the definition is slightly improved in our sealed cabinet. So in a music system, I would say within your budget, use the sealed cabinet, because now with 1000 Pro, every subwoofer in our lineup is the beneficiary of our best technology.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Ed, Zach Sweeney asks, he has a PC 2000 from years ago. He's really wanting a micro 3000 micro. How do these compare in a mid-sized room with openings to the kitchen and a hallway?
I mean, it's really an apples and oranges. It's a bit of a loaded question. It's apples and oranges. The PC 2000 is a large ported subwoofer. It's going to have a lot of low-end output capability. It's a good choice to fill a large room. Good choice for home theater, action, and sci-fi type material. The 3000 micro is definitely going to have an edge in sound quality, detail, articulation, speed. It's going to be more nuanced. Better choice for a music system. Will it keep up at 20 to 25 hertz with the PC 2000? No, but it's not designed to. So it's more of an apples and oranges thing. So it's whatever your preference is, but certainly the 3000 micro has the edge in musicality and sound quality.
I mean, if you were actually talking to that guy on the phone, Ed, and Ed does actually talk to people on the phone directly, or emailing him or chatting, you'd probably ask him, hey, what would you change about the PC 2000 if you could? And, if they're saying, it's everything I ever wanted, then you probably wouldn't change it. But if they said, hey, I'm hoping to have, a quicker subwoofer, one that has better control of room gain, one that's maybe a little more accurate in terms of its frequency response, then the 3000 micro would be a real upgrade. Would you agree, Ed?
Yeah, it's a conversation to have. What are you using the system for? What's your source material? What are your listening preferences? Is there any issues with the obvious size and visual impact of the PC 2000? I mean, it's hard to ignore in a room. It's not the most elegant looking sub. 3000 micro is.
I disagree. It's beautiful, but okay.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But one thing you have to say about 3000 micro, it can be tucked away anywhere.
Yeah, that's what I was driving at. If that is a high priority in the system and in the room, then absolutely, the scales start tipping in the favor of something like the 3000 micro.
All right, completely different direction. Gary, Michael P asks, do you have a recommendation for equipment racks?
Well, again, that's one where you would probably ask the person, what are you trying to accomplish? We actually, I live in DC. I have a very good friend who who started a furniture company years ago and makes, I think, the most attractive visually AV furniture on the planet, and that is BDI. My friend is Bill Becker, their founder and CEO. And then another one that I like is Salamander Designs, and that's actually another friend. They're in, I think, they're in Rhode Island, Nick. I'm pretty sure. He's Providence. And then as far as the kind of, I guess, audiophile type of cabinet, there are several. I'm not even positive. I should have, I didn't expect this question before the show. There's a company called Target that makes really good high-end audiophile. And the benefit is, especially if you have a record player, the stability of the cabinet for a high-end turntable is really, really important. So you want to get one that is metal with bracing, wood shelves, and the ability to spike it.
And I would say
for
a more industrial, like equipment rack, you might stash in a closet. I think Middle Atlantic is a company that makes, decent or good quality.
That's racking. Mid-Atlantic is a racking company,
Exactly.
and so those are.
If you're not looking for furniture, but more of that industrial, just sort of, storage, hold equipment, that's going to be a brand that you might look out for. But there's a number of those, and I don't think there's a lot of difference in terms of the style with that. It just has to be sturdy. You're sticking it in a closet, so it's not as much a style factor with those. Well, here we are at half past, so I think we're ready for another giveaway. Larry, do you remember what we're giving away for our second prize of the evening?
This is going to be Prime Elevations.
Ooh, on the spot, and you nailed it. And our winner of a pair of Prime Elevation speakers for tonight is George Young. Congratulations, George Young. Look out for a notification from Vince. We'll get your shipping information, take care of you. Congratulations, George. All right. So we have a question here that I know we could probably spend an entire night talking just about this topic, and I'm going to spring this one on you, Ed, but hopefully you can give a very simple answer and maybe direct this person to some resources. But Greg Wild asks, when using the SVS Subwoofer Control app, what is the best way to use that with the REW software? Do you do it before or after running Odyssey? What's your basic advice when using that? And again, I don't think we want to start a very technical conversation about REW, but basically, what's the order of things that you recommend when integrating that sort of room software? And maybe give a quick explanation of what REW is.
You mentioned quick 3 times. So I get it.
All right.
Yeah,
did you get that?
You can definitely do a deep dive with REW. So I like to use Room EQ Wizard to find the best spot in the room for the subwoofer. It's a great screening tool for that. There's some bad spots that you could root out and avoid. Once you find a good spot in the room that Room EQ Wizard's happy with, run auto setup, give Odyssey a crack at it if that's the system you're running, if it equalizes the subwoofer. And then afterwards, if there's any additional opportunities for equalization, again, using Room EQ Wizard to see how good of a job the receiver did, then you can implement the PEQs in the app and further smooth out the response.
That was quick. I'm proud of you, Ed. I know you could have gone off on a tangent there, but you really handled that well. So congratulations on that one.
Mm-hmm. We can be brief when we need to be.
There you go. Sometimes brevity rules.
No comment.
I'm going to kick this one to you, Larry. And this one comes from Brian Becker. And this might be an it depends question, but I want you to navigate through it. He asks, how many watts do Dolby Atmos speakers need? And we'll relate this to the Prime Elevation.
It depends.
Let's give a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, the wattage is going to come down to what you can supply to it. The speakers themselves have power handlings and sensitivity and all these things that kind of come into play. But most of the receivers.
Well, I think one thing you can react to on that is the question is not really whether it's Dolby Atmos or some other surround sound format. The question is, how loud do you want to play it, and how much, as Larry, how sensitive are the speakers? Meaning, how loud do they play with the same amount of power going into them as a different set of speakers would, and then also power handling. And you do want to think about things like that. We certainly worked hard at SVS to make sure that our subwoofers and speakers can play as loud as the listener would like, and also to do that. Especially, over the course of a movie, it's playing for 2 hours, pretty darn loud, depending on the person. But you want to make sure that the speakers can handle that. And then a very important point that Ed often makes is you never want to put more power into the speakers than the amplifier has been designed to deliver, because the distortion that comes from that is what blows speakers and also blows eardrums.
Right. And the other thing to keep in mind is the overhead height effect channels are not terribly power hungry anyway, just because from a content standpoint, they're for surround effects. You know, the overhead channels, there's not really a lot going on. So the average amount of power going to these speakers, you know, might just be a couple watts. And that's plenty to deliver the intended effect. Same thing for surround back speakers. There's not really a ton of power going to those. The front
three. If you're hearing those all the time, they're probably turned up too loud.
Yeah, exactly. There's not really a need for massive power handling from these channels because they just don't get a lot of that much signal.
And there's also on our website, every single speaker we have has the recommended power settings, prime elevation included. So it'll tell you the range of what, you know, the minimum versus the maximum power. And I think most speaker brands will tell you what the you know, rated power that you're supposed to feed into the speaker is. So that's a good sort of range to start with, you know, before you just start experimenting off the cuff.
I just saw a good question. It kind of flew by, but it's an excellent question, which is there protection circuitry in SVS subwoofers? And I'm not sure what the person meant who's asking the question. Is there surge suppression protection, meaning if there were a lightning strike or voltage peak, is there protection from that? And or is it, the question is there protection in the subwoofer from playing it too loud? And the answer to both is yes, especially in our most expensive subwoofers. We do have voltage regulation in there that provides some protection to the amplifier in the event of voltage fluctuations. And then the other thing that SVS subwoofers do, it's something we don't talk about that much, and maybe we should. We have used very, very sophisticated what's called amplifier limiting. And what amplifier limiting does is it gently kind of rolls off the amplifier output when it's being driven to its limits. And by doing it very cleverly, by rolling it off only at certain frequencies, only at the very highest volumes, and of course having amplifiers that can deliver massive current and drivers that can handle a lot of power, you don't really know that the amplifier limiting is even there. It's there, but you're not supposed to know about it. You're supposed to just play your subwoofer as loud as you feel like playing it without worrying that you're going to blow it up, or feeling like, oh, it stopped playing loud, I wish it would play louder. We really avoid both of those problems with our very, very high performance amplifiers and drivers, but also amplifier limiting that is totally transparent to the user. Ed, did I say that in a way you would say it?
Yeah, transparent's the word I was going to use if you didn't. The DSP limiter compressor circuits are very sophisticated. You know, we've got attack time, sustain time, soft limiter, hard limiter, frequency, bandwidth that we, you know, all of this stuff is available to us in the software when we're actually programming the limiter function. We actually have several limiters in the amplifier, and they're designed to cover certain bandwidths and have certain characteristics depending on if it's thermal or mechanical that the subwoofer is experiencing. So there's a lot that goes into it, but the end result, as Gary said, is the subwoofer always sounds unstrained, transparent. It's never going to make, you know, bad noises or self-destruct, and it's going to keep you into the experience. And that's really the end goal.
So staying on the topic of subwoofer amplifiers, Brian Larson asks, and I'm going to throw this one to you, Larry. He's very new to audio equipment, and he has become obsessed. So clearly, he's after our hearts.
Welcome.
But he asks, what is the difference?
Join the club, my friend.
Yeah, it's a dangerous obsession, but it's a healthy one. Trust me. What is the difference in sound that he would hear going from a powered subwoofer that has rated at 300 RMS versus 1200 RMS power? And then I think we can talk a little bit about the difference between RMS and peak power. But what is he going to hear differently when jumping from that 300 to 1200 level, and anywhere in between, I guess?
Well, I think one big thing to take into account there, if you're going from an amplifier that's typically 300 watts to a 1200, you're probably going from a smaller sub to a much larger sub in most cases too. So like in our family, that'd be like a 1000 series versus a 4000 series. So there's a significant jump in physical size, driver size, output, and volume, how big a room it can take on typically. And if you're looking at the exact same cabinet and stuff, there's a lot that's going to go into play there. But I don't think we really look at what you're going to get out of wattage when
There's
talking
no one
about,
factor
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. So it's more.
That's a great answer, Larry. I mean, basically, you're saying that one of our hallmarks of what we say is that a subwoofer is an ecosystem of the cabinet volume, the cabinet configuration, the driver design, the driver's ability to output, to basically create sound, and then the amplifier's power, which is not just watts, but also its current, its ability to control the driver. These are all things that interconnect and create a total experience. So I wouldn't focus on any one thing. That said, as you point out, Larry, 4000 series have a very powerful amplifier, because without that, the driver would only be potential. It wouldn't be reality.
So sticking with the power ratings, Ed, why don't you give a layman's explanation of what the difference between the RMS rating is versus the peak power rating?
That's a loaded question too, but really we look at RMS really means the continuous power output of the amplifier. So when we say it's a 300 watt RMS amp, that means it can generate 300 watts continuously. Then we look at peak dynamic power.
And we rate the distortion at that continuous power.
Correct.
Which is important to say.
Right.
Because any amplifier can output a lot of power if it isn't, if you're not measuring the distortion. So always when you look at amplifier ratings, look at the distortion that's associated with that rating.
And
then peak dynamic, exactly as it implies, the amplifier is not capable of sustaining that power level continuously, but we design a large capacitance reserve in the amplifier, and it is capable of scaling up to a much greater power level temporarily to hit those dynamic peaks cleanly, and which a lot of source material does, have that in it. It's a very brief transient, bam, the sub steps up, the onboard power reserves kick in, and you've got the peak dynamic power available to hit those transients, and then you scale back down again.
Well said.
And to point out why this becomes an important thing to discuss is, in this current era of digital amplifiers and switching and power supplies that deliver the power on demand, the peak power becomes really, really important. It literally, you can see in some houses, you can literally see lights dimming as the power supply is pulling power from the wall as needed to deliver a total experience. That is peak power. That's what that is. And so measuring that, you wouldn't want to ignore that. You wouldn't want to only talk about continuous power. You would want to talk about peak power because of the power supply that's able to draw from your wall on demand and create the experiences that you're looking for.
But it is fair to say that the RMS is the more important rating. Is that?
Well, the RMS is a lot harder to fake, and some companies try to fake their peak power. Unless you just want to just flat out lie, you can't really fake RMS.
Yeah.
Peak power is something that used to be abused, especially in the olden days. I don't think it's abused in the same way, but we also feel strongly that not telling the user or listener about the peak power, it's kind of doing a disservice to the fact that we have these very sophisticated power supplies that can deliver insane amounts of power on demand. And most of the time, you're not using even a small portion of the RMS power, but
Right.
at times you are rising beyond it for those musical or dynamic peaks.
Yeah. But I can remember there were times when there were some who would just list the peak and not even bother with the RMS, which is very misleading.
That was the olden days. I don't
That
think
was the
anyone,
olden
hopefully no one does that anymore. That
No,
would be terrible.
I haven't seen that in a long time. All right, so going back to the connections conversation we were having before, that actually generated a couple questions. Grandpa Ease asks, and Ed, I'm going to throw this one to you. Is it better to run two cables directly from the source or daisy chain them from one sub to the other?
It depends on the subwoofer amplifier. If you're running them directly from the source, obviously it's very clean. There's no issues associated potentially with daisy chaining. Our newest amplifiers, literally it's a line loop in to loop out again, so you can daisy chain without concern. There's no DSP applied to it. There's no delay. There's no high pass filter. So in the case of our amplifiers, it's totally fine to daisy chain. Some of the earlier versions of our amps did apply DSP to the line out. There was some latency. There was maybe a fixed high pass filter. So in those cases, you would not want a daisy chain, and you would want to use 2 separate cables. So it's very much of the it depends type answer.
We're going to do a whole show one night where we just get, it depends.
Yeah, it depends. As long as you're dropping some knowledge with that, it depends, then I think you're doing a service there. But we are ready for another giveaway here. And Larry, I'm putting you on the spot. What's the next giveaway?
It's a Prime Wireless SoundBase, which I've got right there and in my bedroom. Use it every single day. Absolutely love it.
Amazing integrated amplifier that streams Wi-Fi.
You can just see mine in my SoundBase in the corner of my video.
Oh yeah, I can kind of peek that over there to the right.
There it is.
There you go. Well, our winner of the 300 watt 2-channel integrated amplifier with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth streaming and lots of other bells and whistles is Mike Mergalis. Mike Mergalis, congratulations! You have a new Prime Wireless SoundBase coming your way. Congratulations.
I have a question from Ward that I thought was a good question. If we're ready for the next question in the lightning round.
That's what we're here for.
So Ward asks, how impacting would it be if I changed my front left and right but kept my other brand center? And this is something we haven't talked about recently, but we've talked about it a lot in the past. We're huge supporters of sonic and timbre matching of all the speakers in your system, meaning and what we have done with our Prime series speakers and our Ultra series speakers is they are obviously sonically matched within the series, but they're also sonically matched across the 2 series. So you could have a Prime center in the same system with Ultra bookshelves, or vice versa, a Prime bookshelves with an Ultra center. You can do any of those things, and the voicing is the same. So what about Ward's question that he wants to keep his center channel of his original brand, but upgrade, hopefully to SVS. He doesn't really say that, but hopefully to SVS.
We're going to assume.
Front, left, and right, but maybe not. But I guess what I would say is this is a journey. It's fun. It's okay to do what Ward is considering doing, upgrading his front, left, and right speakers, leaving his center the way it is. But I would say the end game for Ward and for all of us should be to have sonically timbre matched speakers all around your system. If it's a 7.1.2 home theater, having everything, all 9 of those speakers timbre matched and sonically matched is the goal. But it's okay to do that step by step, which I think is what Ward is probably thinking about doing.
Yeah, the front stage is really important for timbre matching, because how often have we seen a character talking on the left side of the stage and then walks through the middle of the room and fades away on the right? And I have actually heard systems that had a different center channel, and it was like, say, a horn speaker, and then there was maybe soft dome tweeters on the front, left, and right, and the voicing, the tonality, the timbre changes obviously when the soundstage pans across all 3 channels. So if you're gonna do it, try to keep the tweeter style similar and the voicing similar, and it won't be that much of a shocking change. But I think Gary's advice is good. The end game should be matching on the front stage.
No, but that's a good and very important point. What you're really saying is those 3 main front speakers, let them be the same if at all possible, right from the get-go. So I agree with that.
So back to the connections. Somebody asked, Elijah asked, is XLR not subject to electromagnetic interference, Ed? And I think it depends on the cable, right? Another it depends question.
Well, we were talking more about RFI than EMI. So the XLR is very good at rejecting RFI and also AC noise in the signal. EMI, it's not so much of an issue on line level connections.
Okay.
So but he's probably asking it just from a place of noise floor without really specifying the interference. And I think we can safely say that the noise floor and the rejection of interference is way higher with balanced audio cables. And we have no horse in that race because we don't have a balanced audio cable.
But the quality of the cables makes a difference too. If there's no shielding, there's no jacket on them, like there's going to be more. They're going to be more prone to any kind of interference than if they actually have, multiple layers of. I'm going to use a big word here. Dielectric, I think, is what we call it, shielding. And so I think that's really one of the biggest factors is making sure you choose cables. And again, the question of, how much should I spend on cables? What's the difference? That's one thing that actually does make a difference if you are experiencing any kind of interference, is to make sure you have that level of shielding that will actually, prevent any kind of interference that you might be susceptible to. I'm actually seeing, we usually get what's the difference between 1 and 2 subwoofers. Is it really worth upgrading a larger subwoofer to one larger to 2 smaller subwoofers? But I'm seeing multiple questions about, is it worth upgrading dual subwoofers to quad subwoofers? And this person specifically David's asking about, should I go from dual SB-3000s to 4 SB-1000 Pros? And Ed, what do you get when you go from 2 to 4 subwoofers versus, I think the implication of his question is,
I'll let Ed answer it, but the implication is same budget, 4 1000 Pros versus 2 3000 series. Why wouldn't I just do 4 1000 Pros? It's actually a really good question. So go ahead, Ed.
It's a case of, I think duals is a huge step function over a single. And then it's a case of diminishing returns going from duals to quads. With quads, you obviously have to find space for them in the room. That's not easily done in a lot of systems. They do provide a bit smoother bass at more locations in the room, obviously, because you've got denser coverage. From a performance standpoint, it's a bit of a loaded question because you're looking at 3000 series versus 2 of them versus 4 1000 series. I would stay with the 2 SB-3000s over 4 SB-1000 Pros. The SB-3000 is such a capable and dynamic and powerful subwoofer. That would generally be my choice over 4 SB-1000 Pros. And also,
but it's a harder question to answer nowadays with 1000 Pro, isn't it? Because that's a really capable subwoofer, even though it's our most affordable.
It's a great sub. I don't know if a lot of people could actually fit 4 in the room, and that's part of my caveat.
You're still getting deeper low frequency extension with the dual SB-3000s. Is that?
That's true. That's a great comment.
SB-3000 goes deeper, and no number of SB-1000 Pros is going to improve the extension. You'll just get better output and better coverage, but they won't necessarily.
I think Nick actually captured what you were trying to say very well. That's good.
Sure.
So sticking with subwoofers, Robert C. asks, and Larry, I'm going to throw this one to you. This is probably less about the subwoofer he chooses and what he does with the subwoofer, but there's my preface. He's moving to a new space. The space has echoes, and there are lots of windows. Does the amount of windows and glass affect what subwoofer he should use?
Well, that's also going to come down to room size and stuff. I think it's finding placement is going to be key. Making sure you're getting the right subwoofer for the amount of room that you're putting it in or the square footage there. But also dampening factors, curtains, furniture, rugs, all that stuff's going to come into play too. But windows can impact a little bit.
System.
Yeah, so taking advantage of the SoundPass subwoofer isolation system, corner loading in some rooms or going ported can make up a lot of that. So really that's another one where it says it depends. And I think we're getting a lot of those questions tonight because a lot of the questions people ask around subwoofers, a lot of it has to do with your room majority of the time more than just kind of saying, can I do it in this space? So kind of looking at where you can place it, what you're going to be listening to, will it fit in that particular area? Do I need to go dual? And if you're doing this in a large open space loft or like efficiency style apartment or condo, if you can do two and take a little bit of of the, I don't know, the overdriven that most of us like to do with a single sub, split it up amongst two and even out that space in your room.
Hey, I want to say there's a comment, and I don't know if the same person is saying it over and over again or if it's different people saying, Ed starts with qualifying answers and then adds caveats, and he's sort of being silly and kind of laughing. But there is method to Ed's madness, and I'm not doing this to defend Ed. It's because we don't want to give you just sort of dogmatic, it's always should be this, it never should be that.
Yeah, absolutes.
A lot of these questions are excellent questions, but there are things we would need to find out to give you the best answer for you, which is one reason why Ed leads a team of people that just do that 7 days a week. And so I really want no one to think Ed's unwilling to take a position. In fact, if anything, over the past, Ed and I work together, and I'm like, you got to take less of a position, because there's so many nuances to what people really are hoping for in their home theater or two-channel system. But we don't want to just dictate and be dogmatic. We want to listen to what the situation is with the room, the content, and what the hopes are for the person who's going to be enjoying that content.
Yeah, it's a conversation. There's no absolutes in home audio.
Okay, he's just kidding, Ed.
I know, but there's no absolutes. You want to have a conversation. You want to talk about the room, the system, the listening habits, the priorities, everything like that, and let the user steer the conversation and then select the best products for them. And
we have chat, phone, email, and there's a good chance you'll talk to Ed directly if you reach out to any one of those channels. And any one of his cohorts is also equally, well, maybe not equally, but almost equally as suited as him to answer any of these kind of questions. So, all these it depends. We'll ask you the right questions that you can answer, and then the advice will be what will actually get your system sounding its best. Because again, it's like these absolutes may not be what gets your system sounding its best. So I think that's an important point that we should all bring up here. And I do have a self-serving one here because I work on these, but Bradley asks, do any professional studios use SVS? And if you've tuned into the Audiophile Happy Hour before, you may have seen a couple of our guests who actually own and run their own professional studios. We actually have a section on our site called Featured Artists and Producers, where you can read about some of the studios that are using our subwoofers and speakers to mix and master various
and producers.
Albums. And producers, yep, who are using our products to mix and master various albums. So the answer is yes, and we're very proud of that because I think that's another level of validation because it requires just pinpoint accuracy and all of those qualities that we talk about here on a regular basis. But it really puts it in a place where it's not being enjoyed at home, but actually using it to create the content that you are enjoying at home. And I think we're super proud of that as well. So Bradley, yes, they are, and read about them on our site, and hopefully we'll have some more guests here down the line that will actually be able to talk about it.
I just had a call. I don't know if I even told you this, Nick. I just had a call with Hank Shockley, who was one of the first ones we featured. Hank is one of the original founders of Public Enemy, made two of the great hip-hop albums of the 90s, Fear of a Black Planet, and the other one's escaping me all of a sudden. But he was just telling me how much he just loves, and he, by the way, it's not an endorsement, but just saying how much he loves using our products in his studio. Just made me feel so great.
Yep, and I love talking to those people. They're always reaching out to us, and a lot of these people who are in the pro industry, mixing for music and movies, they come to our sound experts team and they ask, like, how do I get this sounding right in my studio, whether it's a massive studio with all sorts of monitoring speakers all around or sort of a smaller office setting. So it's an area that still translates from the home theaters out to the pro audio places. So if you are in that field, definitely reach out to us and we can be an asset to you. So we are 1 minute away, which means we have one more giveaway to go. But before I do that, our next happy hour is going to be Thursday, September 9th, 6 p.m. Eastern time, as always. We will have the normal crew here, lots of fun and excitement. We have great questions that we didn't get to. So Eli, copy those. We'll put them into the agenda for next time. We'll get some more questions. Our final giveaway of the evening, Larry, what is it?
That is going to be a 3000 micro subwoofer.
We've been talking about that 3000 micro the whole show, so this is a good giveaway.
So our winner of the 3000 micro subwoofer is, drumroll, Micah Kane. Micah Kane, congratulations. We will get your
Congratulations, Mike.
So again, thank you everyone for tuning in. Awesome questions tonight. This flew by. Had a great time. We'll be back in a couple weeks, September 9th, to do this again. And again, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you down the road.
I also want to thank everybody. The engagement. I was fun watching the comments. You guys are the best. Thanks for being part of our community.
They're good at teasing us too.
Yeah,
they were. Yeah, you were getting it. Ed
like
was getting. Usually, it's me that gets heckled. I'm glad to see Ed get some.
All right.